The Huntsman of Adamos, The Huntsman's Honor, Book 1. Chapter 10. Moments Between Brothers. 8 years later. Yurieth arrived home at the winter castle of Adamos for the Eve of Light returning celebration. The snow had left the world pristine and white. It was so different from the desert wastelands, arid plains, and dry mountains of Seleucia. Next spring, they were going to make the final push to overcome the Seleucians in their mountain strongholds, and their enemies knew it. He looked forward to the brief respite of home before the coming battles. In his rooms, his mother had long since replaced his childhood bed with a writing desk and given him a much larger bedroom suite. His brother had the same one floor above. Leaning on the desk, he half smiled at the memory of finding a bear cub in his closet and the mother bear who had burst through the window. That was the day they found out the truth about his twins' magic, the day everything changed. Yurieth now realized that if Yurieth had not been changed by the pools of destiny from an oracle to a huntsman, they would probably both be dead and Etheria would be under Seleucian rule. But it had not been without cost, and now that Yurieth had lost his family, Yurieth feared for his soul. His brother had become a weapon and a murderer. Later that afternoon, after resting and reading his correspondence, Yurieth walked into the library of where the family often gathered, and was shocked to see Yurieth hugging their mother. It was an unexpected surprise. "Brother, I am so happy and relieved that you are home for the winter solstice. It has been too long." Yurieth hugged his twin. "It is good to see you too, brother." Yurieth's smile didn't reach his eyes. It never reached his eyes anymore. He had a new scar down the left side of his face, and his hair was darker, as though he had recently removed dye from it. "My sons are home for the Eve of Light returning. It has been too long since we celebrated the Day of Hope together." Yulymina beamed. "How long will you be home?" "A month, Mother," Yurieth answered first. Yurieth shook his head. "I'm sorry, only a week." He hugged her to take the disappointment away. "I'm sorry, brother, but Regulus sent me to get you. We believe the Seleucians are going to attack on the days of rest and celebration. He is very quietly recalling his defense force commanders." "But they are sacred days." His mother frowned as his father joined them. "Is he certain of this assault? Are you certain?" Adamos asked. "Yes, father, we are. The Seleucians are moving their forces to the front line, and are stretching them thin to have coverage. We do not know what they are up to. They do not have enough warriors and mages to push us back, yet they gather, build up blood altars, and prepare to make sacrifices," Yurieth explained. "I am going in with my huntsmen to save as many as we can from their profane magic." Their parents held a silent conversation. Then Yulymina stretched out her hands to her sons. "Then we will be grateful for the time we are given." Yurieth frowned as he and his brother stepped off the transport from Etheria. He had hoped to spend a few lunars with Regis, training their journeyman huntsman. They were at a critical juncture it was time to see who would become a Master Huntsman and who would be a normal huntsman. Guardian Regulus and Guardian Ra-Utath were waiting for them in the command building with dozens of protectors. All 10 of Yurieth's huntsmen were there, and so were Regis and Seamus, much to his surprise. They greeted each other with a slight nod. The Zelutians will be attacking in a few days. They know our forces have returned home to celebrate the holidays with their families. But we, the Guardians, have recalled our best warriors to hold the lines. Our mages prepare to deal with whatever the blood mages attempt through magic. We will show them that even at half our numbers, our armies cannot be overcome. Guardian Ra-Utath boasted, and many cheered. Yurieth and Abrieth both noted the stoic mask the guardian of the House of Remus wore. As the youngest of the surviving guardians, Regulus had to defer to his elders, regardless of who was the better field general. Regulus made a slight gesture, which both of the sons of Adamos saw. They nodded once. Ra-Utath called Yurieth forward, and the Master Huntsman explained how his huntsmen would be infiltrating the lines to destroy the blood altars and blood fires, and killing all the blood mages they found to protect the guardians, protectors, and warriors from magical attacks before acting as a flanking assault. The discussion then turned to staging the guardsmen and protectors across the foothills of the mountains. The Etherians had finally surrounded the central part of the Zelutian Empire. The Smoke and Shadow Mountains, comprised of over 200,000 fields, or square kilometers, worth of arid plateaus and valleys, sulphurous geysers and volcanic vents, littered with active and dormant volcanic mountains. It was as rugged as it was beautiful, as deadly as it was majestic. The Etherians had already discovered that centuries of acid rain had weakened the faces of the mountains, and rock slides were as commonplace as snow slides during the winters at home. It was a treacherous place, with few paths through it. Most of the roads were through the old mining tunnels, where it was said the Zelutians had first found their god of blood, fire, and death buried. No one knew if it was truth or myth, but Yurieth had fought creatures under the mountain that defied the lexicon of zoology he had been taught as a child. At the end of hours of discussion, Ra-Utath dismissed them all with the boasting promise that this would be the last large battle they fought, because the Zelutians would realize they had only two choices left: surrender or conquest. Nearly 2/3 of all Etheria's warriors were not involved in the fighting, but were involved in the reclamation and rebuilding of Zelusia. By pure numbers and actions alone, the Etherians already ruled this world. The longer Ra-Utath boasted, the more rigid Regulus became. Regulus had spent centuries leading the army while under the yoke of Etherian politics. Now that the war's end was in sight, another had come to claim what he had worked so hard for. Without another word, Yurieth, Abrieth, Regis, and Seamus followed Regulus to a flyer. They flew toward the mountain passes where the heaviest fighting was expected to be. "Tell us the truth, Father. What is bothering you?" Regis finally demanded of Regulus, as his father stared down at the troops spread out below. "I feel we are acting in haste, my son. We do not know what these new blood altars do, or why they are attended by female blood mages. Ra-Uteth should not be so certain the mages of his house can overcome them. Not when the mages of Odini seem so concerned." Regulus answered. Then he turned to Yurieth. "In your explorations, Master Huntsman, have you ever found a use for the female mages beyond those of the male ones?" Yurieth shook his head. "Not significant. At the temples of Ashrath, they called the priestesses sirens, like a signal to alert. But I have no idea why they are different from the other priestesses, other than they sing and chant weirdly. Perhaps they are more efficient at relaying messages than males," Yurieth theorized. "Why would they put females, women, on the front lines of the battlefield?" Seamus asked. "We know they have no value for life," Yurieth answered. "Perhaps they are hoping we will hesitate when faced with a female enemy. Or maybe those pathetic princes and mages are too scared to face us now that we bring the war to their doorstep," Seamus mocked. "Do not get too comfortable with your victor's crown just yet. We still have to fight the battle," Regulus warned. Then he looked back out at the gathered troops. Black columns of smoke from the towns and cities located in the mountains billowed into the sky and made Yurieth shudder. He could feel the abominations hidden there, but there was something else, something like a soft voice calling to him, and he wasn't sure what it was. "It looks nothing like home." Yurieth's voice startled him from his musings. His brother was always catching him off guard, and it disturbed Yurieth that he could no longer sense his twin. "Why are you up here alone, little brother?" Yurieth demanded. "I don't know, big brother. Something is coming. Whether it is good or bad, I cannot say. I can feel the abominations hidden in these hills, but there is something else. I can't explain it." Yurieth shrugged with a frustrated sigh. "The blood mages are preparing to spill a lot of innocent blood. They will use magic to push back against our forces in ways they haven't before. They are becoming desperate. If the Etherean lines fall, do not let them capture you. Get to the dry forest in the mountains, and I will find you," Yurieth promised. "Yurieth, I am a protector. I do not fear to fight." "But against magic?" Yurieth knelt next to where his brother stood, staring at the shifting light at the end of the day. He picked up a handful of pebbles and began tossing them off the precipice, one by one. "Something is different this time, brother. I can feel it. They will not be content to pick us off one by one. Please, Yurieth, you're all I have left, all that stands between my soul and insanity." "You have mother and father," Yurieth started, but Yurieth cut him off. "Yurieth, you know things with father have been difficult. And mother, she has not been the same toward me since my daughters, since they were born. He fought against the regret that rose like bile in his throat. Mother knew you were at war. Whatever happened then, she has forgiven you for not being there, just as Roseray did. No, brother, she has not. And Roseray never forgave me. She hated me. I lied. I acted without honor, and they both knew it, Yurieth confessed. Yurieth watched his brother scoop up another handful of pebbles and begin tossing them away, one by one. So you in the Amazonie, the rumors were true. How could you? You were married. Like you haven't had your share of females. They practically fall over themselves to run their fingers through the polished copper hair of the Joffriel. Yurieth snapped at him. I have had far fewer than everyone thinks. You know that. And I wasn't married to the Queen's cousin. Yurieth tossed it back in his face. You're right. I'm sorry. Yurieth was silent as he looked at the pebbles in his palm. It didn't even mean anything to me. It was like it was with the Solutions. Purely physical desire and emotional emptiness afterwards. Roseray somehow knew, so I lied to her rather than hurt her more. But she figured it out eventually, and she hated me. Yurieth groaned as if in pain. Then he threw all of the pebbles out into the void beyond the precipice. Together they listened to the stones falling and clicking on the rocks below. All I ever did was hurt her. We even fought the day she died. A mere hour before the berserkers abused her body and drank her blood. She told me she hated me, and she threatened to take the girls away. Yurieth listened quietly. He had never heard his brother speak of that day, a decade or negatively of his 2 centuries of marriage. I dishonored myself by attacking her. Trembling with his emotions, blinking hard, Yurieth refused to let a single tear fall until this war was done. Yurieth, I picked her up by the throat and threatened to give her to the berserker warriors, because she told me someday my daughters would learn I was a murderer and hate me as she did. Why would she say such a thing? Willow and Lily adored you. Yurieth was shocked. Because I wanted them to move out of the house I built for her to a place that was safer, and I wanted to teach the girls to use the bows I made for them for their birth anniversary. I went to hunt so I wouldn't hurt my wife. I was so far away when they were attacked that I couldn't save them. I loved them so much. I would have given up everything to keep them safe, even my life. When I felt my daughters die, my heart died with them. I killed them. You did not kill them. The Solutions sent a strike force to come after all the huntsmen and guardians. You are lucky not to be dead. We both are. Yurieth's words sounded hollow to himself. My family was murdered because of who I am. The master assassin, The one Regis killed told me so. He said what Callisto warned me about. King Apollyon put a price on my head specifically, and I will not rest until I remove his heart as he did mine. Yurieth vowed with such cold certainty that Abrieth knew it would happen. Looking up at the sky, Yuri said, I don't care how long it takes. I will avenge my daughters. What about Roseray? Will you avenge her? Abrieth asked Yurieth carefully. His brother stood up and laughed in a cold, self-deprecating way. I never deserved her. She was a beautiful, gentle, peace-loving soul who could be unbelievably naive at times and frustratingly feisty at others. But she lived her life in compassion, as a healer should, while I lived my life in carnage as what I am. I honestly don't know what Mother was thinking when she paired us. What are you, brother? Abrieth inquired. He wondered if his brother saw himself the way he did. Shrugging, Yurieth's answer was odd. I am as much assassin as huntsman. I am both and neither. If I had a heart, perhaps I would be able to answer you. Don't die tomorrow. Yurieth took 3 powerful steps and jumped off the cliff, falling into the shadows below. Abrieth didn't even bother to look. There was nothing to see. His brother was a ghost. The end of Chapter 10, Moments Between Brothers. The next chapter is Chapter 11, The Harvest of Grief. Thank you for listening.